They're not slamming it though by any means.
No. Well, that last one I had, he didn't want to let go. He was pulling pretty good. And they don't seem to be out on this outer edge either. They're back a little ways, not super far. It's a lot like chestnut fishing on the Hudson River.
Very much so.
Except instead of the vegetation being this big, it's these pancake lily pads. Here's one. Ugh. Oh, come on, baby. Oh, it's really in there. I'm gonna have to go in after this bad boy. Come on. Oh, I don't know if we're ever gonna get this one out of there. Come on, bad boy.
He's way over yonder.
Yep. Oh, come on. I don't know if he's even there anymore. I'll have to see what happens, give it some slack. I don't think so. Maybe. Think there's one down there, Ed?
It's a good possibility.
No, I think all I got is weeds. That's it. That was a good fish. He took, you see how far he took it? Oh well. They're in here, man. We'll get them.
There's one.
Yeah! Here we go. Yeah! Woo! Man, there are some pigs in lily pads. Look at that, Ed.
That's an enormous fish.
Gosh! You know, we're not catching a lot of fish, but when we are catching fish, they're really small.
We'll take it though.
We'll take it. I'm not complaining, I'm just having fun. Even a fish that size is a lot of fun to catch, especially when you rip them out of this thick stuff. Ed, why don't you take the motor for a little while? I want to talk a little bit about flipping and pitching.
Sure.
All right. The technique we're using today to catch these fish out of the lily pads is flipping. We're also pitching. Flipping and pitching are similar. They're not exactly the same technique, but they're both short casts. They're both heavy line techniques that are primarily used in heavy cover, whether it be weeds, vegetation, wood, whatever it is. The reason we're using this technique, with all this heavy cover, we really don't want to be throwing a bait super far back into this stuff. We'll never get a fish out. The whole idea is to take your bait and sling it out there and try and slip your bait through the holes in the lily pads. These fish seem to be sitting under the lily pads. They're in the shade. They're very happy being there. It's probably 10 or 15 degrees cooler under the lily pads than it is out here in the open water. So what we're doing is we're taking our bait, we're finding an area that we want to fish. Now I try and go for little holes in the lily pads, and I get it out there a little bit further than the hole, and I sort of slide it back, and I try and get it to drop in the hole, or sometimes just by jiggling your bait, when you get it to the edge of a lily pad, you'll be able to get it to drop into the hole. In order to pitch or flip, it's important to have the right tackle. You really need a heavy rod, and you need a long rod. They make specialty rods just for flipping. This rod is a 7-foot rod. It's a heavy action rod. I've got 25-pound test on this. Now I know to a lot of people 25-pound test is not what you want to use when you're catching 2 or 3 pound fish, or even 5-pound fish for that matter. But when you're fishing in this kind of heavy cover, it's very important to use heavy line. You'll never get the fish out otherwise. Can't tell you how many 3-pound fish I've broken off with 20 or 25-pound test in this heavy stuff. Very important to use heavy line and a real stout rod. You want to take your bait, you want to measure out enough line so that you can pull your line out at about an arm's length and still have the bait even with the reel. Then the whole idea is to sort of swing the bait out and feed the line out with your other hand. You have a quiet presentation this way. You keep the bait low to the water. It enters quietly, and you can be very accurate with where you put your bait with a little bit of practice. So that's flipping. Pitching is a little bit different. You can use the same tackle to do it, and the whole idea is to get the bait a little further out. So what you do, instead of feeding line out with your hand, you sort of use a pendulum motion again, and you swing your bait out, and you let the weight of the lure pull line off the spool. Again, you want to keep the bait low to the water, and you want to stop the bait when you get to your target and let it enter the water very quietly. So it's like this. Well, I was able to pitch about 25 feet with that pitch, which is a fairly decent distance. It might have even gone further, and I really wasn't winging it out there. I could have gotten it further if I wanted to. But for most of these applications, you don't want to throw it a mile. You want to get it out there as far as you have to, but you want to be able to get the fish out of this stuff. And if you've got your bait way out there, you'll never get a fish out of heavy cover. It's also very important that you have a real good free spool on your reel. I really like the Shimano Castaic because besides having an excellent free spool, it's a high-speed reel, so after I'm done with my pitch and I've fished the little area I want to fish, I can reel my bait back in very quickly. It's also got a feature called Insta-Gauge, which allows me to engage the reel as soon as the line hits the water. The Insta-Gauge allows you to re-engage the reel after a cast or a pitch without turning the reel handle. This comes in very, very handy in a pitching and flipping situation where a lot of times a fish will bite as soon as the bait hits the water. I can engage the reel before I've ever changed to my other hand. That can come in very handy. A lot of times you'll get bit, you'll already be engaged. The fish isn't swimming off with your bait. Here's one. Here's one. Step back, step back. Come on, baby. Ooh. I think we got another good.
Good job.
Yeah. Okay. There's a nice fish. There's a nice one.
Good job, buddy.
Ed.
Another good Williams Lake fish.
That's right. Thank you very much. You know, I'm really glad you suggested we come here and shoot a show because fishing out of lily pads is definitely one of my favorite things to do. And that's another beautiful fish, about 3 pounds. Williams Lake is loaded with these fish. Just beautiful. All right, let's let this guy go. There we go.
Good job.
Right back under those lily pads. Beautiful, just beautiful. All right. Let's see if we can get a few more.